Welcome back to the Foundation in C# course. We are currently in Module 7, and this lesson we're going to be covering another mini project. This one for ASP.NET Core Razor Pages. So before, let's go first to our homework, which you can do, and then come back and watch and see how I did it. So your homework is to build a Razor Pages application with 2 pages. Create a page that takes in a person's information, and another that takes in a person's address information, but there's no need to associate the two together. That's just extra work that isn't really necessary since you wouldn't normally do it this way. You'd normally do it directly to a database. So we're not going to associate the 2 records together. Just have an entry page for people and another entry page for addresses. Okay? Now, as far as linking goes, I would like to see you put the links in the navigation page. So try that out as well, where you actually have a clickable link to go to the person page and another one to go to the address page. Okay, so that is the assignment. No need to even post back the data. Post the data, but don't have to display it again on the page. Just post it and then make sure that you can put a breakpoint in there and look at the data and make sure it's there. Okay? That's all you need to do. Go ahead and do that right now. Pause the video and then come on back when you're done. Okay, I'm going to assume you are done now. And if you're not, well, I guess that's fine, but I would definitely encourage you to try and do it yourself before I do it. All right, here's Visual Studio. Let's create a new project. An ASP.NET Core web application. We're going to call this the Razor Pages mini project. And the Razor Pages mini project app. And we'll hit create. We want a web application, Razor Pages. HTTPS is yes, no Docker support, and no authentication. We'll get to authentication with the MVC pages. All right, so this is our basic template, and now we can start working with this. Now, in the WinForm project, we create a class library, and we put a couple of classes in there to use. Well, we could create a class library just like before, but just like with our WPF project, we're going to reuse that class library because there's no reason not to. And so I'm going to bring in that DLL. Now I'm going to right click on my project and open the folder in File Explorer and just move this DLL right into the same root of the project. That way we know where it is. But that's our demo library DLL we created back in the WinForms demo. So if you didn't do that demo, you're missing out. You need to do that because there's an order to this. So now we have our reusable library. We're going to reuse it. So right click on dependencies, add reference. And we could use a reference directly to where it was, but I'm going to use a reference in this project. So browse. I'm going to paste in this project and select that DLL and hit OK. And now that DLL is referenced, I can use it as a class library just like I could in WinForms and WPF. So this is just demonstrating that the class library can be reused more and more as you use different projects that use the same code structure or similar things. Maybe not the entire library, but maybe parts of it. Okay, and it doesn't matter that it's a web application because it's still C# behind the scenes. Let's go to our pages. We're going to add 2 pages. The first Razor page, there's a regular Razor page, and we're going to call this the, let's just call it people. And that's all the changes we need to make. We are generating the page model. We're not using it as a partial view. We're not using a non-standard layout page. We're using the underscore layout page. Okay, once that gets scaffolded out, then we'll create another one for addresses. That first one takes a little bit. I actually paused the video just for a few seconds to let that run because it is restoring packages. Now that second one shouldn't take as long. we're going to add and say addresses. And that's going to scaffold out the addresses page. Okay, that's a lot faster. So just know if yours takes a little bit to run, that's okay. It's actually downloading things in the background as it adds packages that it needs. So if you go to manage NuGet packages and look at what's installed, there's actually 4 NuGet packages already installed. And that's because these are how Visual Studio supports the Razor Pages application, is through NuGet packages. And that's a good thing. Don't freak out if you have lots of NuGet packages. That just means that Microsoft has broken things up into replaceable parts so that you can replace one part instead of the entire thing. Okay, so we've got our people page and we've got our addresses page. And it's right in the root here, and that's fine. So let's create our form down here for entering people. Actually, let's create a person object first. So we need to have a prop, and let's add a using statement first. So using demo library. And off the top of my head, I figure out what demo library has in it. So I could just say demo library dot, and I have person model and address model. Okay, got that. So now this is going to be a person model. And we'll call this person. And we'll make sure that this is a bind property so we can post to it. So person model. Now with that, we can come back over here and create our form. And we'll say last name. Actually, let's capitalize N. There we go. Let's do the same thing up there. Last name. Let's add labels for each of these. So label ASP-4, and that's going to be person.firstname, like so. And we'll do the same exact thing for last name. And let's just make sure that just so far we have something that looks basically right. Okay, make sure that we're on the right track with our page. So this is the people page. There you go, first name and last name. We got something going on that looks right. Now, I used the label for, and it said first name, and it's all crunched together. Maybe I want to change that, and so we'd have to create a model that had a display name, and that's where we'd use a model in our UI, not a model in my class library. And so that's where that differentiation comes in between a UI model, like a user interface model, and a data access model, or even a business logic model. You can have models that have the same data, but multiple of them, and that's okay. Because each might have a different reason for existing. They might have different attributes or things like that. In this case, I would probably create a model for the front end and create a display name for the first name property so that I could have that display. But I'll leave this as it is for now. And we're going to say div class equals form group. And this is going to be for our checkbox. So let's create an input ASP dash. Whoops. We don't want it there. We want it outside of our form groups. And we want a button with a type equals submit, and then a class equal to btn. This is the styling class. So it's styling this to say it's a button, first of all, and that makes the buttons look a little nicer than just the default HTML button. It styles it with certain look and feel. But then I'm going to apply another class to it, btn dash, and let's do primary. I guess primary is usually the primary one we use, but Bootstrap has various color schemes for things like success and warning and danger, and in this case primary as well. And so you have a whole list of different colors you can use. I call them colors because they usually color things a certain way, but there's other things they do as well sometimes. But in this case, it's mostly just color. So let's say it's a primary button, and let's say, let's call it submit, and that's what the user sees, that text right there. And now it should be that we have a form that is running the way we want. Now I'm using IS Express here instead of the command line version. That's okay. Doesn't really affect anything. It's not person, it's people. There we go. So first name, last name is active, and submit, which does nothing right now. So let's wire that up. So we have a public action result for on post. And what this does, it allows us to check to see if the model is valid or not, and also redirect or even redirect to the same page. So let's actually redirect to a different page and also check to make sure the model is valid. So if model state, now where'd that come from? Well, it's baked into the page model that we inherit from. Model state.is valid. So let's check the rules for all these objects, which right now I don't have any real rules here, but I could say, hey, you can only have this range for a number from, let's say, 1 to 10, that's it. And it's going to check all those rules, that validation logic, and make sure that all the rules have been properly applied. So if the is valid equals false, then what we'll do is return page, which says post right back to the same page, and then the user can resubmit this form. But if it is valid, then let's return redirect to page, and we're going to set the page to redirect to. I'm going to say let's redirect to the index page. Okay, so that's saying go to, this dot means the site root. So the site root / index, that's the page to redirect to. So as long as you post a valid person it's going to change pages on you and go to the index page. Let's put our breakpoint in right up top of the if. So we make sure we capture it either way. And this should be all we need to get our person page up and running. So we're going to go to /people. And we're going to say, well, first of all, it's going to hit submit. It hit the breakpoint. And it says the model state is valid, is true. Here you go. The model state, and then there's is valid right there. It says true. So it is true because we have no validation logic. So whatever the state is, that's what it is. And so we'll hit redirect, and it goes back to the home page. If I go back one to go to this page, and I say, well, actually, Tim, Corey, and yes, I'm active. Submit that. First of all, the model state is still valid. But if you look at the person itself, so the person object now has first name of Tim, last name of Corey, and yes, they're active. No addresses, though. So that's working as intended. Let's close this page out. And before we go on to the addresses page, let's modify the navigation bar so it has links for the person or the people page and the addresses page. And we do that in shared layouts. Remember, we have this navigation section. And here's what I do, because this is a lot of typing. That's a lot of stuff on the screen. You go, I'm not sure how this all works, how to do it. Don't worry. Here's what I do about 95% of the time. Is I already have the navigation in place because that's what the template gives me. And I say, copy, paste. And I say, well, I want you for privacy. So let's put this one, let's make this people. Object to pass back to the addresses page. So, well, first, let's bring in our using statement for using demo library. And now I can say prop, I want a list, just an address, not even a list. So address model, address. And I'll make sure that's a bind property. And we'll also create a post for this. So public action result on post. And in here, we're going to do our state check. So if model state dot is valid equals false, return page. And this is just a good habit to be into to make sure that you're checking your model state. So you're checking the validation on the server side. Now, you can also put validation on the client side, and that's a good thing to do as well, because then the client side won't even allow you to post until you get your model correct. But you don't want to trust that that client side validation is in place. You want to make sure you also check on the server side as well. So return, redirect to page, and we're going to redirect again to the index page. We could redirect it to the people page or something like that. Let's just redirect right to the index page. So that's our code behind here. We'll put our breakpoint so we can look at the address model. And now we're going to create our address form, which looks a lot like this. So let's just copy and paste this. Make our lives a little easier. But instead of person, it's going to be address. And instead of first name, it's going to be interesting addresses. Nope. The address model. I think we're running into a keyword issue here where it's having a hard time finding the address model. Let's try it again, see if in fact it is, or if we can address this. So it is looking at, yeah, it's using a keyword issue. Let's do this. Let's call this, something besides address, let's call this user address. That'll make sure that we're outside of that keyword. So we can say user address dot, and it's still giving us that issue. So we have, I believe, street address. Okay, so the editor's got a couple of quirks here we got to work through. Let's look at what that address model is. Aha, there's the issue. So it has nothing to do with the name itself. In fact, we can go back to just address, but we call this the addresses model, which that's not correct because that's the name of our class. We want the address model, which comes out of demo library. My bad. So address dot street address, that should work. It does. So address, and we'll call this street address with 2 S's. And this will be address dot city. And we'll call this city. And we don't have a checkbox, so let's get rid of that. And instead, we'll copy these 2 again and paste. And now we can have a state. Say state. And this one's going to be zip code. Like so. And that's all we need to do for that form. Now, if we run this, remember I put a breakpoint there so we can capture the posted value. Once this loads, we'll go to the addresses model. And it's kind of ugly right now. We can format that and fix it. But with this, we can now say 1, 2, 3 State Street, Clark Summit, PA, and 18411, submit. And if we look at this address, it's Clark Summit, PA, 18411, and 123 State Street. So it has brought that address model in correctly. And of course, yes, the model state is valid because we're not doing any kind of validation against it. So in a lot of ways, this homework was quite simple compared to the Windows forms just because we're not doing a whole lot with it. We're not doing any kind of association logic. And the reason for that is because we don't have any data access behind it. Because in theory, what would happen is we would save this model to, in here somewhere, we'd save this address model to the database, and then maybe redirect back to the person object, where we'd reload from the database the person object and all their addresses, and we'd display that on the web page. And then we would, from there, allow a person to modify their information or add another address, which would go back over the addresses, enter it in, save it to the database, and again, reload from a database. So those are the things we're not doing just because that's outside the scope of this user interface, because all we're concentrating on right now is user interface code. That's it. That's why we're not talking about talking to databases. I'm talking about, we're not actually doing it because that's outside of what a user interface does. A user interface talks to a class library that does data persistence. So with that, I think the homework is complete. So let's look at the pro tip for today, which is that Razor pages make page structure easy. As you saw a page structure there, very easy to put a new thing on the route. We just put it in the folder. So wherever your page is, that determines the route to your page. So if your page is in a subfolder, it's that subfolder / your page name. Really easy to work with for routing. So Razor Pages, it's a great place to start if you're starting out in web development with C#. I encourage you learn the actual C# code first, but then this is a great place to start for web development. All right, thanks for watching. Once you're done practicing this and trying it out, come on back for the next lesson where we dive into MVC.